Chapter 7. People can be more forgiving than you can imagine, but you have to forgive yourself. Let go of what's bitter and move on. Bill Cosby. For goodness sake. Investing a lifetime pursuing the mastery of forgiveness is a lifetime well invested. This is a hard one. Forgiveness. It almost hurts to say it out loud, doesn't it? Been a journey of hard work for me, maybe for you too, especially when we're not educated to understand its real meaning and importance for others and us. I didn't understand it or have a clue as to its real value for me. I may even have viewed it as something weak people do because they allow people to hurt them and then forgive them again and again. Unfortunately, the consequences of holding on to unforgiveness is that an incredible amount of hostility was building up within a pool of resentment inside me, serving no helpful purpose at all. I was raised in an environment where every time I did something naughty or nasty that I didn't regret as a typical child, I was forced to say, "I'm sorry," and the recipient was forced to say, "Okay," and then off we had to go and play. And the same was true when I was the recipient of someone's real feelings or intended actions at the time. When I was much younger and we were more flippant about altercations, being coerced into peacemaking to leave the event behind us and move on was almost a relief. It happened. I'm sorry. You're sorry. Now let's go play. As I got older, and there was less parental intervention in our playtime and friendships, the nastiness stuck, often escalated, feelings were hurt, pride and egos were wounded, and sometimes we fixed it, hugged and moved forward, grateful the event was behind us. But often we moved forward indignant and a little resentful, holding on to the memory of the hurt and remembering the supposed weakness of our friends or parents to use later as a weapon on a new day. Are we on vaguely familiar ground? When people say, "Boys will be boys," I think they mean a conflict event happens, it's pointed out, a fight ensues, it ends, it's over, it's move on time. If people say, "Girls will be girls," they might mean a conflict event happens, sulking ensues, a nasty remark passes, sides are taken, a war erupts, nations fall, reparations are paid, the leaders make up, and often the patriots miss that and keep the fight alive for a while longer until the truce and its settlement terms are pointed out, and then the weapons fall to the ground and it's hop, skip, and jumping in some form or another. No? Often close, I think. Anyway, I think the point is, how are we supposed to grow up with forgiveness in our hearts and have the peace that comes with that, without someone teaching us the real meaning and how to apply it constantly, not only with others, but very much personally with ourselves? Without that understanding, we have the wonder word emotion that brings down families and nations: resentment. If it's not resentment, it's guilt. Gotta love it. If it's not guilt when you've done something you regret, it's self-reproach. Now who can eat with all that in their stomachs? We either don't eat at all or try drowning out the emotional upheaval with loads of all the things we least need. Some don't just eat, they drink, they drug, they drive themselves nuts. If we live with unforgiveness, we raise our children with the bitterness that is born of it. They learn not to forgive others and not to forgive themselves for their own disappointing actions, and we're not setting up much of a cycle for the planetary inhabitants we all interact with either. I hope that sharing what I've learned on forgiveness and unforgiveness helps free you, as it's freeing me, to be a better you in every way, especially as a parent. Unforgiveness is like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die. Nancy Dornan. The first time I heard that, I felt a fireball explode in my stomach. When I sat with it and tried to source the flame, I found a lifetime of personal and familial resentment under a cauldron of hurt, both self-inflicted and otherwise, simmering in the center of my being. Was horrible. So I started to journey through the forest of my lack of understanding of this vital concept, and I learned many invaluable lessons. I had to learn the lessons. It was a case of get it straight or die trying, because all anger and resentment really do is rip your insides up. When we're angry, we feel hot and burnt up inside. It's not a comfortable feeling. We feel edgy and short-tempered. My experience of this realization was the growing awareness that I worked my resentment into conversations. Often, I would interact with people who I felt fueled this bitterness and feel helpless to respond, and then resent them for it. I wanted to let it all go, but I felt that if I did, I would be giving the source of my frustrations the upper hand and disempower myself in the process. I had much to learn. I learned that none of us are perfect, and we have to have a mechanism to deal with the imperfections when they surface, or we all slowly self-destruct. I learned that forgiveness is not condoning the behavior of someone else or yourself. Forgiveness is feeling that I really don't like or approve of what has happened, and I do not permit you to do it again. I know we're not perfect, and while I'm wishing your intentions were pure, they do not seem to have been. And even if they were, and you made a mistake, I let go of anger because it's only an expression of feeling helpless, and I am not helpless. I am not giving you power by forgiving you. I am reclaiming my power to choose how I feel. I do not give you permission to treat me in this way again, and I prefer to let go of the resentment I'm living with because of the hurt I experienced when you behaved that way, so that I may live freer and move forward. I've learned that you've truly forgiven people when you no longer need to talk of them in any way. I also learned that we often give people too much power and allow them to walk over us. We deny ourselves our own value in the process and then resent them for our pain. Wonderful circle to be in, like playing a demented version of Pass the Parcel. And the parcel we ultimately open is visited upon us and the world as rage. Not the most useful emotion to live by. We have our children acting out with rage and we wonder where it comes from. Ever heard, do as I tell you, don't do as I do? Inappropriate if you live by it. I have learned that we copy our parents for most of our childhoods, and if they live disingenuously, we learn to do the same. I have learned to ask myself often, what behavior do you want to have copied? It's certainly a challenging one, but it's abundantly valuable when it comes to keeping my actions in check with my wishes for my son's ultimate outcome. I have not only taught my son to say sorry, I have taught him to question how he would feel if the hurt were reversed and ask for forgiveness and then wait to receive it. I have taught him that I too must ask for forgiveness when I have acted inappropriately and wait to receive it. He is as entitled to consider his forgiveness as you are, and in the waiting there is a humbling and a wishing that there were no forgiveness required. What better opportunity to reflect on our behavior and aim to modify it so we avoid these moments in the future? Every day, we get better at it. It's a living work in process. I have asked forgiveness when I've planned to be home to greet my son's return after time with his daddy and missed it by moments. Picture this, rushing all the way home from a meeting that I struggled to bring to a close, watching the clock, taking corners at speed, shortcuts to avoid traffic lights, troubled and determined to arrive home before my special boy, knowing how important it is to him to have me at home when he arrives, and practically flown my car home into the driveway only to watch him climb out of his daddy's car and look over at me, heartbroken that I wasn't home before him. The big thing there is also forgiving myself for missing my goal. I have waited while he considered forgiving me for being short with him when he asked repeatedly for something important to him, and I did not acknowledge it. I have ached at his hurting and wished I hadn't been the source of it, and I believe that in our humanness we lead our children with significance. Also, the truth is, If you're not willing to walk the walk, you can't fake it till you make it, because our children see right through us at the youngest age. A friend of mine said, I love my children unconditionally until they learn to speak and start pointing out where I also need to not this or not that. I guess what she was joking about, she was joking, I'm sure of it, is the fact that our children hold us accountable for what we teach them to do, and if they see we're not living it purposefully, they won't either. We model everything for our children, the spoken and the unspoken. So when it comes to teaching compassion and forgiveness, to facilitate your child having a greater chance of growing up with healthier emotional resources to choose their responses from, if you're not living it consistently, forget it. They won't either. So one of the things I've learned is that when you can truly access compassion, a deep sense of care and concern for the other person, it helps to facilitate the letting go or forgiveness, because we can care about them again even though they've hurt us. Of course, yes, it still doesn't condone anything that has happened or give it permission to happen again. We're talking about personally moving on though, so let's continue. The best example I can think of is in relation to my ex-husband, an example that may run deep between divorced or separated partners. We've never had the opportunity to reconcile our differences or chat thus far, and I was experiencing increasing difficulty in responding positively from within whenever my mobile said, "Hey, you've got an SMS," and it arrived from him. It was not serving me to perpetuate the negativity at all. So, knowing there is almost no conversing between us, I set about working through where I needed to forgive him so that I no longer harbored any resentment for him and could no longer be negatively affected by any interactions we shared. It was some of the most challenging work I've ever done, but I finally divorced myself of the relationship when I did so. Until then, it was only on paper. And yes, there is stuff that surfaces from time to time, and I address it, clear it, forgive myself my reactions, forgive him his choices, and carry on even freer. So I truly forgave him for everything I perceived he had done, which I had been holding on to until that time, and changed his name on my mobile phone to Gov's Daddy, so that when I receive a message from him, it is affection for my son and the relationship I encourage between him and his daddy that I can hold in the moment. There is only a positive response to the interaction for me now, for years already. It really worked. And it's true work and continual process. For forgiveness' sake, because we can't truly give of ourselves until we are forgiving and not unforgiving. I hope you have moments of forgiveness to remind yourself of in this space. If not, I wish you the courage to genuinely apologize to someone you've hurt and wait for the forgiveness and the liberation that follows. And to let go of unforgiveness for those who may never ask you to, or even know they hurt you, so that you may lead your children with more substance too. Why not recap some of those experiences here, or relationships you wish to address with forgiveness? Spend some time thinking about it. Okay, we are freer to move on.